Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and I'm going to be doing a Mekk-Knight Invoked deck profile. So I'm really excited for this one because this deck is a really fun deck that I actually picked up when it first came out because I loved the artwork and the mechanics of the way that the Mekk-Knights actually function because they're really cool and really unique. So without further ado guys, let's get straight into this. Before we do, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out that Patreon down in the description below because we have some awesome rewards for you guys, like getting your name in the description of every single video, getting a signed card sent to you in the mail, or even the Quest Code deck profile just like this one every single month that you are a patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Mekk-Knight Blue Sky. So really cool thing about all the Mekk-Knights is they're actually all the different colors of the rainbow, which is really cool. But they all share the ability that there's 2 cards in the same column, then you can special summon this card to the same column as those cards. So like, for instance, if you have a spell or trap here and your opponent has a monster in the same column, like up here, then I can drop my Mekk-Knight right here. Or if you have a monster in the extra monster zone up here and you have a spell and trap card here, or vice versa, your opponent does, then you can drop the Mekk-Knight in that same column, essentially, which is really cool to be able to drop your Mekk-Knights in the same column as 2 other cards. Then, if this card is normal or special summon from your hand, you can add a Mekk-Knight card or Mekk-Knight monster from your deck with a different name, except Mekk-Knight Blue Sky, from your deck to your hand, equal to the number of your opponent's cards in this card's column. So if your opponent has an extra monster, a monster, and a spell or trap, you get to add 3 different Mekk-Knights from your deck to your hand, which is really insane, and this card is really good. We then play 3 copies of Purple Nightfall. Purple Nightfall is really cool because what this card does is you can banish this card, you can target a Mekk-Knight you can monster you control and banish it until the end of the next standby phase, or until the next standby phase of your next turn. And if you do, you get to add a Mekk-Knight monster from your deck to your hand, which is really cool to help you search the deck and get the exact cards that you might need. We then play 2 copies of Indigo Eclipse, which is the shifty Mekk-Knight, and what this card does is it can shift which column it's in. Like if it's in the same column, if it's in a column, you can just move it over one zone, which is really cool, or move it all the way across the board, which is really cool. I like that ability to move it wherever you might need because it really helps out to move your Mekk-Knights and get them kind of out of the way so you can special summon another one. We then play 1 copy of Yellow Star. Yellow Star is kind of neat because it lets you target a spell or trap or banish a Mekk-Knight monster from your graveyard, and then it lets you pop a spell or trap in this card's column and destroy it, which is super cool. And I will mention you guys that once per turn, you can also use the effect of your Indigo Eclipse to move a different Mekk-Knight. So for instance, if your Yellow Star is in a different column than a spell or trap you want to pop, you can move this if you have your copy of Indigo Eclipse to a zone that a spell or trap is in that you want to pop, and then pop it. We then play a single copy of Red Moon. Red Moon is one of my favorite ones. It actually lets you pop a monster by banishing a Mekk-Knight in your graveyard in the same column. So if I banish a Mekk-Knight, I can just pop any card in the same column as it, which is really cool. Any monster, which is super neat. We then play 3 copies of Alistair the Invoker. Alistair is really cool because when this card is normal summoned, you get to add a invocation from your deck to your hand. And it also has the ability that you can send it from your hand to the graveyard and then make it so your fusion monster gains 1,000 attack, which is a really cool effect. We then play 2 copies of Gamma Seal. Gamma Seal is really neat in here because it can put the card in the same column that you need it, and it gets rid of problematic cards on your opponent's side of the field. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom because the 3 Ash Blossoms just help us deal with our opponent's shenanigans and our opponent's adding from deck to hand and all sorts of stuff that we're having to deal with. 2 copies of Effect Veiler. The Effect Veilers just come in super handy because they stop your opponent's monster effects, and that's why I play this card at 2. And then 2 copies of Nibiru because you're always going to want to go second to Mekk-Knights because your opponent makes you go first. It's a really bad time because usually your opponent doesn't have anything in their spell and trap or their monster zones or anything. And it just ends very poorly for you because you don't have anything to work with because you can't special summon your Mekk-Knights to zones that aren't, being occupied, which is kind of bad. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing, as normal, 3 copies of Call by the Grave. You want this card because you're going to be searching the deck for cards like your purple, Blue Sky, and your copies of the Purple Nightfall. You're going to be searching off of both of those, and so you don't want to get hit with a hand trap like an Ash Blossom and stuff. And also you're searching off your Alistair, so you really don't want to get hit by a hand trap. 1 copy of Terraforming to search your Magical Meltdown. Really important to get your Magical Meltdown as quickly as possible. 1 copy of Mind Control to take your opponent's monsters so you can link summon with them or do whatever you need to do with them. It really helps out with your link monsters a lot with this card, because if you want to go into a card like your copy of your Alistair, it has to be 2 monsters with different types and different attributes, and usually your opponent's going to control something that's different type and different attribute. But the nice thing with Mekk-Knights is they are actually psychic monsters, and then your Alistair is a spellcaster. They're light and he's dark, so it kind of works out to go with a Mekk-Knight and a Alistair to go into your, copy of Alistair the Invoker of Madness. And then play a single copy of World Legacy Key. The real effect of this card is that they can't activate trap cards in the same columns as Mekk-Knights, which is really cool. And when this card is activated, you can target one of your banished Mekk-Knights or World Legacies and add it back to your hand. But usually you're not going to use that effect. But since you are playing the Invoker engine, this card comes in handy sometimes, where it can grab back one of the monsters that you banished from your graveyard to get it right back onto your side of the field, which is kind of nice, which is really, really helpful. But negating the traps is the big thing about this card. We then play 3 copies of World Legacy's Memory. This lets you special summon a Mekk-Knight monster from your hand or deck for free, which is really, really helpful, but you return it to the hand during the end phase. But it's really good just to search out your Mekk-Knights and get them on the field. 3 copies of Invocation, essentially polymerization for this deck. It lets you use monsters in your graveyard or monsters on your field, or monsters in your opponent's graveyard to fusion summon an invoked monster, which is really cool. And also you can use the effect that if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one of your banished Alistairs, shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, add this card back to your hand. So it just recurs your copies of Alistair, which is really nice. And then we play 3 copies of Magical Meltdown, that when this card's activated, you get to add an Alistair from your deck to your hand. And it also makes it so your opponent cannot interrupt your fusion summons, which is really cool. They can't respond to them. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of World Legacy Whisper and 2 copies of World Legacy Secret. This card is really, really good. These both are really good because the World Legacy Whispers let you target a level 5 or higher monster you control and it gains 1,000 attack until the end phase. And it also makes it so it negates any spell card activated in the same column as a Mekk-Knight monster, which is really, really pivotal to the deck to be able to negate those spells and traps. Or spells and traps with World Legacy Key and Whisper. And then also World Legacy Secret lets you negate any monster effect that's activated in the same column as a Mekk-Knight, and it also has the ability that when this card is activated, you get to target a level 5 or higher monster in your graveyard and special summon it back, which is a really good effect just to be able to get any of your Mekk-Knights back on your side of the field, or Makaba, or whatever you need back on your side of the field. It comes in really, really handy. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Makaba. You always want to play 2 copies of Makaba because this card is really, really easy to go into. And when a spell or trap card or a monster effect is activated, you send the same type as the card, monster, spell, or trap, to your graveyard, and then you negate the activation and banish it, which is really cool. We play 1 copy of the Invoked Tower card. This is actually the Spellbook Tower, which is really cool, but it transformed because the Spellbooks, Witchcrafters, and Invoked all tie into one another, which is crazy cool. And Endymion, all 4 of those archetypes, just right off the top of my head, connect to one another, which is really crazy. But if this card is special summon or a monster special summon to your opponent's field, you can target one monster your opponent controls and destroy it. And then once per turn, you can banish a fusion monster from your graveyard, and this card gains attack equal to the banished monsters until the end phase. But it takes an Alistair Invoker and a fusion monster to summon this card. So if you're going in a mirror match against your opponent, or going in a match that your opponent has fusion cards, this comes in crazy good and crazy consistently. But what this card does is, then we play 1 copy of Invoked Purgatrio. Purgatrio is used for OTKing your opponent. You summon this card, it can attack all monsters your opponent controls. It gains 2 attack for each card your opponent controls, and it also has the ability to inflict piercing damage. This card's insanely good. And it's really easy to summon off your Ash Blossoms by banishing your Ash Blossom and your copy of an Alistair from your graveyard, so it's really easy to summon. We then play a single copy of Invoked Caliga. Caliga is kind of neat because it's kind of like Dark Door, because it makes it so each player can only attack with 1 monster per battle phase, and each player can only activate 1 monster effect per turn, which is kind of weird, but this card's really good for control-based decks. We then play a single copy of Alistair the Invoker of Madness. Alistair the Invoker of Madness is really good in here because it counts as Alistair the Invoker, And if a monster is fusion summoned while you control this card, then you can discard a card, and if you do, add an Invocation or Book of the Law, which you're always going to add Invocation from your deck to your hand out this card because we don't play Book of the Law. And if this card neutral leaves the field, then you can add an Omega Summon, which we don't play Omega Summon. We play a single copy of Mekk-Knight of the Morning Star. This card is insanely underrated because if this card is Link Summon, you get to discard a Mekk-Knight or a World Legacy card to add a World Legacy card from your deck to your hand, and you can only use the effect of this card once per turn. And if a Mekk-Knight monster battles in a different column than it, then your monster cannot be destroyed by battle, and also you take no battle damage. So it's really good just to prevent you from being battle damage. One copy of Spectrum Supreme. This card is really, really good because it can attack your opponent directly if it's the only card in its column, and also it cannot be destroyed by card effects, and also your opponent cannot target it with card effects. And then you can send a card you control in this card's column to the graveyard to special summon a Mekk-Knight monster from your deck in defense position. So it just gets out cards out of its own column, and it also lets you attack your opponent directly. And the zones are really nice as well. One access code talker just to pop cards. Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, because it gets really big and it's really easy to summon in this deck. One copy of Unicorn to spin stuff. Phoenix to pop spells and traps. Cross Sheep is insanely good and super consistent in this deck and really, really good in this deck. Alamirage, because you can normal summon Alistair, link the Alistair away, summon Alamirage, and then you can link the Alamirage away, and then summon Gardna, secure Gardna, and then you have a setup for your copy of Purgatrio and Makaba, because this is a light and that's fire, or you have set up for your access code talker, because you can banish them to be able to pop cards on your opponent's side of the field. So you have a lot of good resources in this deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really, really fun deck to play around with. It's super, super crazy consistent, especially with all the hand traps and stuff in this deck. I would not hesitate to carry this deck to a regional level and actually compete with this deck because it is that consistent and that fun to play around with. It's crazy, crazy fun, and it's not super budget, but it's not Eldritch expensive to actually build this deck. It's in the probably $200 range to build the deck, but it's not, you know, $1,000 like Eldritch is about to be with Numeron. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can come to our notification squad, and definitely check out that Patreon down below because we have some awesome rewards for you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.